this framework is all broken here, but this is all bolt on, bolt off. It reminds me of a McLaren. Really reminds me of the McLaren. The bolts are used. I'm not sure what this tank is, but I'm a bit scared.
Matt Armstrong built a global audience by doing what many thought was impossible, buying wrecked supercars and bringing them back from the brink. But as his collection of battered hypercars grew, it caught the attention of someone few expected, a Saudi prince with a taste for the extraordinary. What began as admiration soon turned into an offer so staggering it left even seasoned car enthusiasts speechless. A deal reportedly worth $20 million was suddenly on the table. So, what made these destroyed machines so valuable, and what happened next? The $20 million Resurrection Challenge. Matt Armstrong had already seen the worst fate a supercar could suffer. Over the years, he had come across machines destroyed beyond recognition, cars burned until their paint turned into black ash, engines ruined by deep floodwater that made them useless, and carbon fiber bodies twisted so badly they looked like broken skeletons. Most people would see such wrecks and accept defeat immediately, believing nothing could be done. But Matt Armstrong had never looked at broken cars the way everyone else did, where others saw twisted metal, impossible repairs, and vehicles beyond saving. He saw a challenge waiting to be accepted. To him, no car was ever truly finished. A wreck was simply a machine waiting for someone brave enough to give it another chance at life. Yet even with all the unbelievable projects he had taken on, nothing could have prepared him for what happened one seemingly ordinary day in his workshop. He was sitting at his desk editing a video, surrounded by the familiar sounds of tools, engines, and ongoing repairs. It felt like just another normal day. Then, everything changed. His phone suddenly buzzed. An urgent email appeared, followed moments later by a voice message from a number he didn't recognize. He nearly ignored them, but a strange feeling made him pause. Curious, he clicked open the email. The subject line alone made him freeze. 6 cars, $20 million, no factories. It didn't feel like a normal job offer. It felt like something far bigger, like a carefully chosen invitation meant for someone specific. The message explained that a representative of a Saudi royal client had been watching Matt's work for over a year, studying his rebuilds and impossible recoveries. Then came the real story. A private collector had suffered a devastating loss. A storage facility had caught fire in the night. The result was catastrophic. 6 hypercars were destroyed in a single night. A Bugatti, Ferrari, Porsche, McLaren, Valkyrie, and Pagani. Each one was badly damaged, far beyond what normal repair standards would allow. The manufacturers had already been contacted, but their response was final. No full restorations, only buybacks for scrap value or long delays for possible replacements, if replacements were even possible at all. But the owner refused that option. He didn't want new cars. He wanted his original machines back exactly as they were. So when the factories said no, he turned elsewhere, away from the biggest names in the industry, toward a workshop, toward one man, toward Matt. Matt read the message again and again, each time feeling its weight grow heavier. Because this was no longer just about repairing damaged cars. It was about something much bigger, the idea that only factories had the right to restore what they built. And now that belief had just been challenged and placed in his hands. Why did the factories refuse to repair the cars? How much damage did the supercars get? Let's delve into the details of the prince, the collapse, and the war with the factories. When fire met engineering limits. A shocking disaster marked the beginning of this story when a prince's private car storage facility suddenly caught fire without warning. The flames spread rapidly through the structure, overwhelming early attempts to control them. What started as a fire quickly turned into a full-scale catastrophe, consuming the space in a matter of minutes. The situation worsened after the fire. An automatic safety system activated and released large amounts of water mixed with fire-suppressing chemicals. Instead of helping, It created a destructive combination of intense heat followed by heavy flooding and chemical exposure. This mix of fire and corrosion caused far more damage than the flames alone, leaving the entire facility in ruins. When the aftermath was finally assessed, 6 rare hypercars were discovered in a severely damaged state, each affected in a different way depending on where it had been positioned and how it reacted to the disaster. The Bugatti had been exposed to extreme heat, causing its carbon fiber structure to partially melt, and its engine bay to become a distorted mass of damaged materials. The Ferrari suffered from prolonged water and chemical exposure, which spread corrosion through its electrical systems and rendered it largely non-functional. The Porsche appeared less visibly damaged, but its carbon chassis had suffered structural impact that compromised its integrity in ways not immediately obvious. The McLaren's hybrid system completely shut down and failed to restart. The Aston Martin Valkyrie lost the precise alignment of its suspension system due to stress deformation. Meanwhile, the Pagani suffered a critical crack in its carbon wheel, a level of damage that manufacturers typically classify as beyond repair. Faced with this situation, the prince contacted the manufacturers of each vehicle, expecting professional solutions or specialized repair options. Instead, he was met with caution and refusal. Bugatti stated that the vehicle's structural identity was too damaged for restoration. Ferrari offered a discreet buyback at reduced value. Porsche declared the chassis economically unrepairable and suggested replacement instead. Across all brands, the message was consistent. The cars should be replaced, not repaired. However, the prince was unwilling to accept this outcome. These vehicles were not just expensive machines. They represented personal memories, achievements, and milestones of engineering excellence. Their value went far beyond money. As the gap between financial power and technical refusal widened, frustration grew. The more he was willing to invest, the fewer options he was given. This contradiction became the turning point. When traditional manufacturers refused to continue, the prince chose a different path, seeking out specialists who were not limited by factory rules, warranty policies, or conventional boundaries. People willing to attempt what others had already declared impossible. Was Matt Armstrong's previous work on Bugatti the reason he was called upon by the Saudi prince? How did the famous rebuild go? Let's dive into the details of Matt Armstrong's $6 million rebuild that broke the internet. When disaster meets engineering limits. Matt Armstrong's Bugatti story did not start as a simple repair job. It began with a heavily damaged hypercar, a salvage auction listing, and a level of destruction that would normally end the journey of any vehicle, no matter how valuable. The car involved was a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, an extremely rare machine with only around 60 units produced worldwide. After a serious crash, the front end was badly destroyed, airbags had deployed, and insurance companies officially marked it as a total loss. Repair estimates quickly climbed into extreme territory, with some reports suggesting costs close to $1.7 million just to attempt a rebuild, depending on parts and factory support. At that point, most manufacturers and specialists would consider replacement the only safe option. However, instead of ending there, the story took an unexpected turn. The salvage vehicle was not sent directly back to Bugatti for factory restoration. Instead, it was handed over to Matt Armstrong, whose rebuild approach would later draw widespread attention and debate in the automotive world. From the beginning, the project was complicated by Bugatti's strict policies on repairs, especially when it came to critical carbon fiber structures like the monocoque. The company typically prefers full replacement rather than third-party reconstruction to maintain safety standards and engineering integrity. This meant Armstrong had to proceed without full factory cooperation, making the challenge significantly harder. As the car was stripped down, its complex engineering became more visible. The Chiron's design revealed a modular structure that, in some areas, was more serviceable than expected, using high-strength bolts and carefully engineered sections that allowed partial disassembly. Still, The real difficulty was not taking it apart, but bringing it back together. Rebuilding the engine bay, drivetrain, cooling systems, electronics, and hybrid components became a major technical challenge. The gearbox and drivetrain issues were especially complex, requiring new methods to restore systems that were originally designed to be handled within factory conditions. One of the biggest milestones came when all major systems, fuel, cooling, electronics, and hybrid controls, had to be correctly reconnected. Even a small communication error between components could prevent the car from starting entirely. Against expectations, the breakthrough eventually arrived. The Bugatti Chiron fired back to life, marking a major success in one of the most controversial hypercar rebuilds done outside a manufacturer facility. Beyond the engineering achievement, the story raised a deeper question. It was not only about restoring a wrecked Bugatti, but about the limits of independent repair in an era of tightly controlled software, complex systems, and manufacturer restrictions. In the end, it challenged one idea. Does total loss truly mean the end, or simply the beginning of a harder kind of rebuild? Does Matt Armstrong's workshop have the capacity to fix the Prince's supercar? Is he really unlimited by the capacity of his workshop? Let's dig into the details of the workshop that shouldn't have been enough. Beyond repair, beyond limits. Matt's workshop was never designed to operate within the formal world of elite automotive engineering. It was not a factory, not an official dealership, and not supported by any manufacturer. There were no polished offices, no corporate systems, and no layers of approval. Instead, it was built on something much more practical and powerful. Years of real hands-on experience, constant experimentation, repeated failures, and hard-earned lessons that came only through doing the work directly. This independent nature was exactly why a Prince chose it. Unlike large factories, which are driven by rules, brand protection, and risk avoidance, independent builders operate with a different mindset. Big companies often reject anything that seems dangerous, expensive, or outside approved procedures. Their focus is safety, reputation, and control. But independent builders think in terms of possibility. Where corporations see risk, they see opportunity. Where corporations say impossible, they often say not solved yet. The first delivery made this difference very real. A massive industrial crate arrived at the UK workshop, sealed, heavy, and silent. Even before it was opened, its condition could be guessed from the burnt smell leaking through the edges, damaged carbon, melted plastic, and overheated wiring that had clearly failed under extreme stress. When the crate was finally opened, it revealed a Bugatti Chiron Pur Sport, but in a condition far beyond normal repair. It no longer resembled a hypercar. The rear section was gone. The engine bay was exposed. Wiring had melted into solid, unusable bundles, and carbon fiber panels were twisted and broken, like they had been through a violent collapse. To most people, it would have looked like worthless wreckage. But Matt saw something completely different. He saw potential. He did not follow factory-approved repair methods because none existed for damage like this. Instead, he began a full reconstruction approach. The process started by stripping everything down and examining each remaining part carefully. Every component had to prove it still worked. Every piece of carbon structure had to be tested for strength. Nothing was assumed to be usable until it was confirmed. Anything that could be saved was preserved. Anything that could be rebuilt was redesigned. And anything that no longer existed had to be recreated from scratch, even without official support or guaranteed parts. The work required sourcing components from different places around the world and developing solutions that were not found in any manual or system. It was engineering without boundaries, driven entirely by problem solving. But the Bugatti was only the beginning. Soon after, another vehicle arrived, a Ferrari. And unlike the Bugatti, it carried a completely different kind of damage, bringing an entirely new challenge into the workshop. Did the damaged supercars give him a hard time? How much damage did the supercars come up with? Let's talk about the machines that refused to die. even with water and fire. Water damaged Ferrari, rebuilt reality. The Ferrari SF90 was not destroyed in the usual dramatic way people imagine. It did not go up in flames. It was not smashed into pieces. Instead, it suffered something far more deceptive. It was flooded, and that made the damage worse in a silent way. Fire is loud and obvious. It shows you exactly where it has been. Water is different. Water works slowly. It spreads without warning. It hides inside places you cannot easily see. And over time, it quietly eats away at everything it touches. Inside the SF90, moisture had crept deep into the electrical systems, not just surface damage, but internal decay spreading through wiring like a hidden disease. The car's connectors no longer failed because they snapped. They failed because they slowly rotted. Electrical signals became weak and uncertain. Sensors stopped giving consistent readings. Control units, which are supposed to work together like a perfectly trained team, began to misunderstand each other. Even worse, the hybrid system, the most advanced and delicate part of the Ferrari, was affected. This system depends on perfect communication between electric and combustion elements. Once that communication becomes unstable, the entire car becomes unpredictable. The official Ferrari response was simple but extreme. Replace almost everything: battery packs, control modules, wiring looms, and electronic brains of the car. The cost of this approach nearly reached half the value of the vehicle itself. But there was a complication. Access was controlled by the manufacturer. Any major change outside official procedures could cause the car to be blocked from factory systems entirely. And in this case, the car had already crossed that invisible boundary. So the usual repair path was closed. That is where Matt's team took a different approach. Instead of rebuilding the car by simply swapping parts, they dismantled it completely. Every system was stripped out. Every wire was traced and tested. Every component was studied on its own. Then came a risky idea. If they could not fully use the factory electronic system, could they imitate it instead? Not by copying it blindly and not by breaking into it, but by recreating its behavior, matching the timing of signals, matching communication patterns, making the car think it was speaking to original systems, even when it was not. It was a space between engineering and uncertainty, not fully approved, not fully forbidden. Meanwhile, another project presented a very different kind of challenge. A Porsche with a 14mm shift in its carbon monocoque chassis. A mere 14mm distortion transformed a Porsche from beyond repair to potentially salvageable. While Porsche insisted the unavailable carbon tub required full replacement, detailed laser measurements revealed the structure was bent, rather than broken. The debate was no longer about damage itself, but about how that damage was interpreted. What seemed to be the most annoying thing about the repair of these supercars? Why would the manufacturers insist on retaining technical ownership? Let's look into the $20 million question and the first moment of truth. When machines question ownership. The money was never just money. It was arranged more like a carefully planned mission, not a simple payment. Every stage had its own goal. Every goal had to be proven before the next step could begin. It was built on milestones, targets, and clear evidence of progress. No one was being paid all at once. Instead, payment moved in steps, like climbing a ladder. Each step depended on real engineering results. First, the engines had to come alive again. Then, the hybrid systems had to be restored. After that, each car needed to move under its own power. Next, all 6 machines had to be brought back into full working condition. And at the very end, the final test was simple but powerful. They had to be driven again on the road. But something deeper started to form under all this structure. It was no longer just about fixing broken hypercars. It slowly turned into a bigger question about control in modern machines. Who truly owns a car today? The person who buys it, or the company that still controls the software inside it? The Bugatti became the clearest symbol of this question. It sat in the workshop like a silent challenge, refusing to give up its secrets easily. The Ferrari pushed everyone's patience to the limit. The Porsche demanded careful thinking and precise logic. The other three, McLaren, Valkyrie, and Pagani, each brought their own strange problems, their own hidden faults, and their own technical resistance. Progress did not move in a straight line. Some days brought real breakthroughs. Other days erased progress completely and forced a restart. It was slow, tiring, and unpredictable. But slowly, signs of life began to appear. The Bugatti's engine finally fired on a test stand. The Ferrari's electrical system started to behave more normally. The Porsche's structure proved tougher and more reliable than expected. And for the first time, the project shifted in feeling. It was no longer about fixing what was broken. It was about whether it could actually be brought back to life. Because everyone understood the real moment was not another milestone. It was a single action. One key turning in the ignition. One startup sequence. One machine waking up after being declared finished. If it worked, it would challenge a powerful belief in modern engineering, that digital locks are final and unbreakable. It would show they are just design choices, and design choices can be challenged. But if it failed, it would support the opposite truth, that some machines are truly beyond repair once manufacturers decide they are. Either outcome would matter, not because of the money, not because of the cars, but because of what it would reveal about ownership, control, and possibility in today's engineering world. And as the workshop moved closer to that final moment, one truth became impossible to ignore. This was no longer about 6 hypercars. It was about whether limits are real, or just problems waiting for someone stubborn enough to test them. So, what do you think about Matt Armstrong's latest mission? Do you really think car manufacturers have the right to prevent repairs? We'd love to hear your opinions in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe.